Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What if everything you were taught about money was wrong? Not wrong because you are stupid, not wrong because your parents did not love you, but wrong because nobody in your circle ever learned it right either. I grew up watching people work themselves into the ground, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and still die broke. Good people, hard-working people, people who deserved better, and for the longest time I thought that was just life, that is just how it goes for people like us. But then something happened that changed everything I believed about money. And today I am going to share it with you, because what I am about to tell you, this is not taught in schools, it is barely talked about in churches, and it is absolutely not on social media, at least not the way I am about to break it down for you.
My name is John, and I have spent years studying the money habits, mindset patterns, and generational wealth strategies of some of the wealthiest families in this country. I got close enough to observe how they thought, how they gave, how they raised their children around money, and how they talked about the future in ways that most of us never heard growing up. And what I found completely rewired my brain. Not just about investing or savings accounts or budgets, but about the entire philosophy of what money is, what it is for, and what it is supposed to do for the people you love. I started asking questions. I started reading books. I started listening instead of talking. And what I uncovered were wealth principles that the richest families in America quietly practice generation after generation, while the rest of us are out here, buying things we cannot afford to impress people we do not even like. Principles. That is it. But these principles are the difference between your grandchildren inheriting something and your grandchildren inheriting nothing. They are the difference between your family's story changing or staying exactly the same for another 50 years. So I need you to stay with me right now, and I am not going to waste a single second of your time. Before I get into the principles themselves, I need to paint you a picture, so you understand where these lessons came from. The people I grew up around were brilliant, resourceful, and deeply resilient. But the way they related to money was rooted almost entirely in survival. Get it, spend it, survive another month, and then repeat the whole cycle all over again. The wealthy families I began studying operated from a completely different operating system. And once I cracked the code on what that operating system actually looked like, I could never unsee it. So let me show it to you too. Here is the first principle, and I need you to let this one really land, because everything else builds directly on top of it. Wealthy families do not think about money in terms of right now. They think about money in terms of right now, and the next 30 years, and the generation after that. They are not just asking, can I afford this? They are asking, what does this cost my bloodline? And that one shift in thinking, that one simple question, is responsible for more generational wealth than any stock tip or business idea or side hustle you will ever come across in your life. Let me tell you about 2 men. Both of them are 60 years old. Both of them are baby boomers who grew up in the same era, worked hard their entire lives, made similar incomes, and loved their families with everything they had. The first man, let us call him Raymond, spent 40 years enjoying his money. Nice cars. Vacations every summer. Designer clothes. Always the one picking up the tab at dinner because he wanted people to know he was doing well. Raymond was generous and fun, and everybody loved being around Raymond. But when Raymond passed away, his children had to crowdfund the funeral expenses. There was no savings account, no property, no investments, no life insurance that amounted to anything meaningful. Just memories of a man who lived beautifully and left nothing behind for the people he loved most. The second man, let us call him Thomas, also 60 years old, also a boomer, drove a modest car his whole life. Did not always have the flashiest things. Sometimes got teased by people in his circle for being too careful with money. Sometimes heard people call him cheap behind his back. But Thomas had a question he asked himself every single time he was about to make a financial decision. He would stop and quietly say to himself, does this build my family's future, or does it just build my comfort today? And whenever the honest answer was just my comfort today, Thomas would pause and reconsider. When Thomas passed away, he left his children a paid-off home. A portfolio of index funds that had been growing quietly for 2 decades. Life insurance that covered his grandchildren's college tuition. And a handwritten letter that said, I did not want you to start from zero the way I had to. Same generation. Same era. Same basic income level. Completely different outcomes for the families they left behind. And the only real difference was the question Thomas asked himself before spending money. There is a scripture that says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Not just your kids, your grandkids. That is a 2 generations ahead mindset. That is thinking so far into the future that the people who will benefit from your discipline have not even been born yet. And the wealthiest families who have studied build their entire financial philosophy on this principle, whether they are religious or not. They see money not as something to enjoy in the moment, but as a tool to empower the people who come after them. Now I want to speak directly to the Gen Z people watching this right now, because this one is specifically for you. You are between 18 and 25 years old. You feel like retirement is a lifetime away. You feel like there is so much time to figure the money stuff out later. And I completely understand that feeling. But here is what I need you to understand right now. The decisions you make about money in your 20s have more impact on your financial future than any decision you will ever make in your 30s, 40s, or 50s combined. A 22-year-old who invests just $100 a month into a basic index fund will have over $300,000 by the time they retire with zero additional effort beyond maintaining that one simple habit. The same person who waits until they are 35 to start that exact same habit will end up with less than half of that amount. Time is the most powerful financial asset you will ever own in your entire life. And right now you are sitting on a mountain of it. Please do not waste it buying things that will be out of style in 6 months. Now let us move into the second principle, and this one might sting just a little bit, but I am saying it with nothing but genuine love for every single person watching this. Think about the last wedding you attended. What did you give as a gift? A blender? A set of towels? Some nice dishes? Maybe a picture frame with a sweet quote about love and forever written across it? I am not judging you at all because I have done the exact same thing. People spent real money on those gifts. $200 here. $300 there. People gave from their hearts, and I appreciated every single one of them. But within 5 years, most of that stuff was broken, donated to a thrift store, or sitting forgotten in a box in the back of a closet somewhere. But here is what wealthy families do completely differently. They do not give stuff. They give assets. When a young couple in those families gets married, the gifts that show up are cash, stocks, bonds, and contributions to investment accounts. Not things that lose value the moment they leave the store. Things that grow. Things that compound quietly in the background and are worth significantly more in 10 years than they were on the day they were given. A $300 gift in a broad market index fund 20 years ago would be worth thousands of dollars today. A blender from the same year is worth a trip to the donation bin. And this principle extends far beyond weddings in wealthy families. When a baby is born, somebody opens a custodial investment account in that child's name. When a teenager graduates from high school, the family gift is not always a car that starts depreciating the moment it leaves the lot. Sometimes it is a Roth IRA contribution that will compound tax-free for the next 50 years. When a young adult is heading out into the world for the first time, the family does not just send them off with kitchen appliances. They send them off with financial tools and the knowledge of how to use them. Now think about what that does to a family over 2 or 3 generations. Every single major life milestone becomes an opportunity to add to the family's financial foundation instead of adding to someone's storage unit. Every celebration becomes a wealth-building event. Every birthday, every graduation, every new baby becomes a chance to plant a financial seed that will grow into something meaningful over time. And the children who grow up receiving those kinds of gifts grow up understanding intuitively and naturally that money is a tool for building, not just a resource for spending. I want the Generation X people watching this right now to hear this one especially. You are in your 40s and 50s. You are at the exact stage of life where your kids are getting married, having babies, graduating from school, stepping into adulthood. You are right in the middle of the gift-giving season of life. And you have a choice right now about what kind of gifts your family becomes known for. You can keep doing what has always been done, buying things that depreciate and end up forgotten in closets. Or you can start a new tradition today. You can be the person in your family who breaks the old pattern and starts giving assets instead of appliances. It does not have to be a large amount. A $50 stock contribution is more valuable in the long run than a $200 kitchen gadget you saw on sale. The amount is not really the point. The mindset behind it is the point. And the tradition you start today will outlive you by decades if you do it consistently. Here is the third principle, and this one is about the story you have been telling yourself your whole life about what is normal for people like you. Because what you believe is normal will determine almost everything about your financial future in ways you probably have never fully considered. I grew up in a world where struggle was the baseline and wealth was something you looked at from a distance. If somebody in the neighborhood got a new car, people would whisper, "Where did they get that money from? What are they doing that nobody knows about?" Wealth was treated like an anomaly, like something that fell from the sky and landed on a few lucky people completely by accident. And if you actually pursued wealth intentionally, if you read books about investing and talked about building assets and made your financial future a priority, people in certain circles looked at you like you had forgotten where you came from. I carried that mindset into my early adult years without even realizing it. Because that is exactly how mindsets work. They operate invisibly in the background until something forces you to finally see them clearly. What forced me to see mine was getting close enough to study families whose entire relationship with financial success was the polar opposite of everything I had grown up around. In those households, financial success was not the exception. It was the expectation. It was the default assumption. It was what was supposed to happen. And if a family member was struggling financially, it was not met with judgment or shame in the toxic sense. It was met with genuine collective concern. Like something had gone wrong, and the entire family needed to figure out together how to make it right. Wealth in those families was not arrogance. It was responsibility. It was something you owed to yourself and to the people who were counting on you. And that cracked something wide open in me because I realized for the first time that my own deeply held beliefs about what was normal for someone like me were quietly and actively working against everything I was trying to build. I had been operating with an invisible ceiling in my own mind that said wealth is for other people. Not for you. Not for where you come from. And I had never once questioned it because every single person around me was operating under the exact same invisible ceiling. Think about what changes when you genuinely start to believe that financial success is normal for you. Think about how differently you approach a salary negotiation. Think about how differently you respond when an investment opportunity comes your way. Think about how differently you talk to your children about money at the dinner table. Think about the books you start reading, the people you start spending time with, the goals you start writing down and actually believing are achievable. The mindset shift alone, just changing what you believe is normal for you and your family, is worth more than any financial strategy one could ever hand you. I want to talk to the millennials watching this right now. You are between your late 20s and early 40s. You came up in a generation that was told to go to college, get a degree, find a stable job, and everything would work out. And then a financial crisis hit. And then a pandemic hit. And a lot of you are sitting there with student loan debt and rising rent and the sneaking suspicion that the traditional path was not exactly what it was advertised to be. I hear you. That frustration is completely valid. But I also need you to hear this. The fact that the old rules did not work perfectly for your generation is not a reason to give up on building wealth. It is a reason to learn a new set of rules. The families who build generational wealth do not wait for perfect conditions. They build in spite of imperfect ones. And the sooner you decide that financial success is your new normal, the sooner your actions will start to reflect that decision. Now here is the fourth principle, and I want you to brace yourself a little bit, because this one is the most personal one I am going to share today. And it is the one that hit me the hardest when I first truly understood it. Every single person watching this video has some form of pain in their story. Some of you grew up poor. Some of you grew up in broken homes. Some of you faced discrimination that was real and documented and deeply unfair. Some of you watched your parents make financial mistakes that cost your whole family in ways you are still paying for today. Some of you are carrying wounds from circumstances that were completely outside of your control. And I am not here to minimize any of that. That pain is real. That history is real. And acknowledging it is not weakness. But here is the truth that I had to wrestle with inside myself before I could share it with anyone else. Pain can be fuel or pain can be a cage. And as deeply unfair as it is, that choice belongs to you. Let me tell you about two women. Both of them grew up with almost nothing. Both of them faced real obstacles that had nothing to do with their intelligence or their work ethic. The first woman, let us call her Diane. She is 45 years old, Generation X. And she spent a significant portion of her adult life explaining why she could not get ahead. The system was unfair. The opportunities were not equal. The deck was stacked before she even sat down at the table. And she was not wrong about any of that. Every single thing she said was factually accurate. But Diane also never built anything. She never started the investment account. Never bought the property. Never sat down with her kids and talked about money in a way that might break the cycle. She passed that explanation down to her children, who are now passing it to theirs. 3 generations of completely valid reasons and 0 financial legacy to show for it. The second woman, let us call her Sandra, also 45, also Generation X, also grew up with real obstacles and real pain and a real story that could have justified giving up entirely. But Sandra made a decision somewhere along the way that her past was going to be the fuel for her future and not the reason she stayed stuck. Sandra was not naive about the system. She knew it was not perfectly fair. She knew the road was harder for her than for some other people. But she refused to let an unfair road become her permanent address. She started small. A small savings habit, then a small investment, then a piece of property, then a conversation with her daughter about money that her own mother never had with her. Sandra is not a millionaire. But Sandra's daughter is starting adulthood with more financial knowledge and more financial foundation than Sandra had at 45. And Sandra's grandchildren will start with more than her daughter had. That is how generational wealth actually gets built. Not in one dramatic leap, but in consistent intentional decisions made by people who decided their pain was going to push them forward instead of hold them back. The most powerful financial move you can make is not finding the right stock or the right investment or the right side hustle. The most powerful financial move you can make is deciding right now that your family's financial story is going to change starting with you. Not your kids. Not someday. You. Right now. Today. Because here is what I know after years of studying how wealth is built and sustained across generations. Nobody is coming to save us. No government program, no inheritance, no lucky break is going to do for your family what a changed mindset and consistent intentional action will do over 20 or 30 years. The families who build lasting wealth are not fundamentally different from you in terms of intelligence or talent or deservingness. They are different in what they believe is possible, what they prioritize, what they teach their children, and how they use every setback as information instead of confirmation that they should stop trying. You have everything you need to start right now. Not everything you need to finish, but everything you need to start. And starting is the only thing that actually matters today. So here is my call to action, and I am going to keep it very short because I respect your time. Share this video with one person in your life who needs to hear it. Not because it will make me feel good, but because the person you share it with might be the one in your family who finally breaks the cycle. And that is worth everything.